we go. Our speaker today. Oh, and I wasn't able to talk to her to find out exactly how to pronounce your last name. So is it Eversmann or is it
Eversmann.
Eversmann? Thank
Hmm.
you. I hope I remember that forever and ever. Dori Eversmann. She is a speaker, a facilitator, and a coach. Her topic today, which we can use in every aspect of our life, is from complaining to thriving. And I can't wait to hear it. It sounds as though it's going to be really exciting. She is a person who helps leaders strengthen their communication skills and their leadership presence. She works with leaders and teams committed to building high trust cultures with healthy communication. She founded, grew, and sold an accounting services company while also dedicating more than 2 decades to leadership roles in nonprofit organizations. Along the way, she discovered that truly effective communication begins when we rise above complaining, blaming, and negativity. Let's give a very warm welcome to Dori Eversman.
Hi, good morning. I'm really glad to be here. And one of the reasons I give time to job search communities is because I've been where you are before and attended job search communities and been in that transition. My husband as well. Um, did he's done, gosh, 5, 6 transitions, some layoffs, some other reasons. And I just want to acknowledge, first of all, the fact that you're here. I notice how many people are there? About 30 people here looking for, receiving, giving support during this challenging transition time. There's a whole lot of more people looking for work right now that aren't here in this community and don't participate in these communities. And it does make a difference. So just want you to hear that and settle in. So glad you're here. We're talking about an important topic, at least I think so, complaining, which we're going to get into all the the nitty gritty on that. Let me share my screen. Make sure there, awesome, and then share this, and then swap. So there we are. All right, there's my topic. From complaining to thriving. Here's me, a little tiny snippet. I have 4 adult children. 3 live in Austin and 1 lives in California. I was so sad when she got married and moved to Silicon Valley, and I hope it doesn't churn up their soul the way it did mine and Jeff's when we lived out there during the dot-com. But there's my family, and there's my 2 little doodle dogs. They're in their kennels right now, so they won't interrupt our meeting, but they're the ones that keep me busy. I'm going to go to blank screen and just pin me so you can see me talking on your screen and give you some background to why this topic is so important that I spend my time teaching and coaching around this. In 2012, a friend gave me a book titled 1,000 Gifts, and maybe you've heard of that. It's a book about gratitude, 1,000 gifts. And I was really excited at the time because it was relatively new back then, and a number of people that I knew had read it and had talked about it. It's a New York Times bestseller. I think 1.5 million copies sold now. But back then, people were reading it and saying that it made a difference and made their life happier. And I was at a place where that is what I longed for. I had been struggling with discouragement, even low level depression for years. I'd been seeking help from counselors and medical professionals, and I still just really dragged myself and survived day after day. So I was excited to read this book. I read it. I did the exercises, the gratitude practice that it described, and nothing happened. Actually, I felt a little worse because I'd gotten my hopes up that this would be a solution and to help me feel better, and it didn't. So then it was like, well, wow, I'm uniquely broken. This won't even work for me. My family growing up was super negative. I don't know if you had one or both parents that focused on the negative primarily, but that's what I grew up in. My dad went to Vietnam, and when he came back a couple years after I was born, alcoholism and depression settled in for him and stayed for 50 years. My mom had her own addictions to cigarettes, food, and telling people what to do. And that last one led to a lot of frustration for her because most people didn't do what she thought was best, including me. She complained about strangers in the grocery store. She complained about the traffic. She worked in a library and she'd come home and complain about the people in the library. She complained about friends. She complained. That is how she coped with her frustrations in life. And so, what did I learn how to do? What was modeled for me? I complained. I complained my way through school, through high school, through college, into marriage, into having 4 kids, and I never even noticed it. You see, complaining is a lot like bad breath. You notice it when it comes out of someone else's mouth, but not so much when it comes out of your own. So I didn't even know I was doing it. Why didn't that book work for me when it had for other people? I think I'll turn this back on because let me go to the next slide. Gratitude is the opposite of complaining. So back in 2012, my complaining level, I just picture it like up on the roof. My complaining level was up high and I didn't know it. And my gratitude level was down on the floor. So when I read that book, it moved the gratitude up slightly, but it wasn't enough to move the needle. Complaining is about what is wrong and what is missing. And gratitude is about what is present and what is working. And so it wasn't until I became aware of the complaining in my life and learned some ways to shift my mindset after I became aware of it that my life changed, that the discouragement lifted, that I was able to see opportunities to think more creatively rather than being discouraged. And it made such a huge difference for me. That is why the passion in my life is to teach on communication skills, how we communicate with ourselves and how we communicate with others, because our words create our reality. And so by the end of this talk today, my goal is that you know 4 things. First, the clear definition of complaining. Second, the devastating consequences of complaining. Have a clear understanding around that. Third, that you know the 5 reasons why people complain and how to respond to those in healthy ways. And then the most important is for you to have some steps to get rid of complaining in your own life. So, sound good? Yeah. All right. Before I get started, I want to introduce you to my mentor, Will Bowen. Will is the founder of the Complaint Free Movement, and I am a trained presenter in his framework for complaint free living. And it all started in 2006, 2007 timeframe, and Will was teaching a class in Kansas City, Missouri to about 250 people. And he was teaching them on how to have more success in your life, how to accomplish set goals and move forward in them. And it was like a 3-month class once a week. And he realized that complaining was a big part of what was blocking people from moving forward. And so he created a 21-day complaint-free challenge. And he came up with a bracelet as a mindfulness tool. Now, you might remember around 2004, the Livestrong Foundation came up with their yellow plastic bracelets. And Will was thinking, what is a mindfulness tool I can use? So he just picked purple. There's not really a specific reason, but he picked a purple bracelet and he created a 21-day challenge to go consecutive days without complaining. And the way the mindfulness tool works is you put it on, and that's day one. And then if I catch myself complaining, I take it off one wrist, see if I can get it off. And then I put it on the other wrist. And then I'm back to day one. And then the next day, I'm paying attention to words I express. I type, I put an email, I leave on a phone message. If I catch myself complaining, I move the bracelet and I'm back to day one. So it's not 21 consecutive days of paying attention, but 21 consecutive days without complaining, which is a lot harder than you might think. So after that original class, the idea spread. People asked him to come in and speak to their workplaces and their classrooms and to their other groups. Like, okay, let's all get on board in our communities to do this complaint-free challenge. And since that original class, the organization, he set up a nonprofit. The organization has distributed more than 15 million bracelets in 109 countries around the world. And the question is, why does this topic, why does this resonate so much? And it resonates around the world for two reasons. First is there's too much complaining in the world. Nod your head if you agree. I'm guessing most of you are nodding. And second, the world isn't the way we'd like it to be. Yep. Agreement there too. And the interesting thing is that these two are correlated. There's too much complaining in the world, and the world's not the way we'd like it to be. So we complain about the world not being the way we like it to be, and then there's more complaining. You see, that's because what we focus on expands. That's because what we look for, we get more of. That filter that we put on to life when we're expecting and looking for problems, we see them. And it's an energy drain, and it's almost like putting blinders on where we filter out the 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 brain term for it is the reticular activating system, I think. I'm not a scientist, but it zeroes in. It's our brain's efficiency to look at what's important. And for a long time, what was important to survival was looking for what's wrong. But nowadays, our lives are relatively safe. So it's not a life or death situation most of the time when we're seeing what's wrong around us. But our bodies, our brains still go into life or death and fixates on problems, wanting them to disappear. So what is a complaint? Complaining defined. A complaint is to express grief, pain, or discontent. It's to express grief, pain, or discontent. And if we were all together in a room, this is where I say, what is the yellow word up on the screen? And you would all say express. So by definition, a complaint is expressed. It is important to recognize that it is not complaining to speak directly and only to the person or people who can help resolve the issue. So I'm not talking about toxic positivity when I'm talking about reducing complaining in your life or even getting rid of complaining in your life. Because if you go directly and only to the person who can resolve your issue, that is a request for accountability. That is not complaining. There's a quote that talks about this pretty clearly by Eckhart Tolle. Complaining is not to be confused with informing someone of a mistake or a deficiency so that it can be put right. And to refrain from complaining does not necessarily mean putting up with poor quality or bad behavior. There is no ego in telling the waiter that your soup is cold and needs to be heated up if you stick to the facts, which are always neutral. If you stick to the facts, which are always neutral. How dare you serve me cold soup? That is complaining. And do you hear the difference? How dare you serve me? How dare you? How dare you rain on this day? I wanted good weather. How dare the traffic be heavy today when I'm trying to get to my meeting on time? And there's an energy to complaining around I'm frustrated that my life is inconvenienced. I am the center of the world and everything I expect everything to accommodate my preferences. So that is complaining. It's very different than the energy of just describing facts. So what's wrong with complaining? Complaining costs money, particularly in organizations. Complaining is costly. As you can guess, you've probably experienced complaining drains morale, creates a negative culture in the organization. And I have a sheet of paper here with some statistics. The statistics don't stick in my brain as well, so I'm someone who keeps my notes for that. Dr. Steve Patkin, Patchin, he did a study and found that 78%, so three-fourths, 78% of employees spend 4.5 hours per week listening to coworkers complain. So I'll say that again because I think that's pretty amazing. 78% of employees spend 4.5 hours a week listening to coworkers complain, probably participating as well. So I crunched some numbers with ChatGPT's help. The average wage right now, according to ChatGPT, across the whole United States is $32 an hour. So if we multiply that by 4.5 hours, by 50 weeks, most employers are paying about $7,000 a year so coworkers can complain to one another. So it costs money. Another study found that 1 out of every 10 employees quit because of complaining coworkers and negative culture. When people quit, that's costly. Um, it's stressful. When people quit, the work is spread out on the people who are there until someone is hired. The average replacement rate for an employee across all industries in the United States is $15,000. For knowledge workers, people in the tech industry or knowledge workers in Houston was the research I pulled up. The average replacement rate there is about 40 to 60,000 to replace that person. And who resigns? Who quits in a complaining culture? It's your key employees. It's the ones that are less focused on the negative and are more productive. So you're losing your your key employees, and then you're getting more. The ones that stay are the ones that complain, and then it becomes more entrenched into the culture. So complaining costs money. Complaining is also a competitive sport. Have you ever noticed that complaining goes in increasing degrees of higher severity? So interesting. People out complain each other when they're in a group talking. One story to illustrate that is a group of people were standing together after at the beginning of a gathering, and their buddy walks in and he's got a little bit of a limp as he walks up to say hi. And someone in the group looks and says, what's up? What happened? He said, "Oh, I'm embarrassed. I woke up in the middle of the night and stubbed my toe. It really hurts. Then looks like the nail's turning black. Maybe it'll fall off." Someone in the group hears that and goes, "Oh, I once got up in the middle of the night and stubbed my toe and stubbed it against the edge of the not dresser, but like the counter in the bathroom. I stubbed it on the edge of the counter and broke it and was on crutches for 3 weeks." And then another person in the group hears that and says, "Well, one time my uncle got up in the middle of the night, stubbed his toe, fell, hit his head on the coffee table, and died." So that's a story example of how complaining is a competitive sport. Now, it never happens in the reverse. There wouldn't be a group of people and someone say, "You know what? One time my uncle got up in the middle of the night, stubbed his toe, fell, hit his head on the coffee table, and died." And then another person in the group says, I recently got up in the middle of the night, stubbed my toe, and then it hurts. The nail's turning black. If it were to happen in that way, people would turn and say, "What are you talking about? Don't you know how complaining works?" It goes in degrees of higher severity. Complaining is a competitive sport. People out-complain each other, which is such an interesting dynamic. Another problem with complaining is it keeps us focused on the problem, keeps us focused on problems. A story to illustrate this is about two construction workers that had just started at a new job. And they sat down to lunch one day, and the first guy opens up his lunchbox and he looks in and he's like, ugh, not today. And his buddy says, "Oh, what's wrong?" He says, "This meatloaf sandwich. I hate meatloaf sandwich." Next day, they sit down to lunch. First guy opens his lunchbox, looks in, says again, "Oh, not again, meatloaf." His buddy just shrugs. Third day, they sit down together. First guy opens up his lunchbox. He looks inside, he reaches in, he grabs it, and he says, "Not again, day in and day out. I keep getting the same thing." His buddy asks, "Why don't you ask your wife to make a different kind of sandwich?" And he says, "I make my own lunch." If you forget everything else I talk about today, that point, you make your own lunch. I hope you remember. We make our own lunch. And when we focus on problems, we get more, create more, attract more problems. Because what you focus on expands. And the energy that you radiate out of negativity and complaining, only focusing on what's wrong and what's missing, tends to attract people to you as well that have that same energy vibration. So that's part of the problem with complaining. Complaining also damages health. What the studies and research, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about burnout and different things that happen when our bodies or minds are filled with negativity, is cortisol is released. Sometimes adrenaline, but cortisol, I think, is the bigger problem for ongoing complaining. So short bursts of cortisol help us in emergency situations. But when we have chronic cortisol, it is very damaging to our system. It causes inflammation, and inflammation leads to a whole host of all the things that we hear that we want to avoid: high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, yada yada yada, all the things that we want to avoid. And of course, our bodies have weaknesses. The more inflammation we have in our body, the less resilient we are to whatever weaknesses show up. So by allowing our cortisol level to be higher, we make ourselves more susceptible to health challenges. And picture cortisol, high, complaining, driven, chronic cortisol, as you're in your car and you're driving with a foot on the accelerator pedal and the brake pedal at the same time. So you're revving your engine constantly, and it's just this tug and this tug, and that wears your car engine out faster, just like complaining revs up our cortisol and it wears our body out faster. Also, it's damaging just for our brain functioning. There's a study that was done that specifically to find out what the effects on our brain function is when we hear complaining or we complain. And so the first part of the study is they hooked people up to a scanner, and then they had another participant sit right in front of them and face them, and their job was to complain. And it doesn't matter what you complain about. Complain about the weather, complain about people you make up, or real things in your life. And so imagine them sitting across from each other, and one one person is just complaining. And they did the experiment for 45 minutes to an hour, which is kind of hard to imagine just sitting and making up complaints for 30 minutes, but that's how it worked. So the brain scan showed no change until about the 30-minute mark. And participant after participant, after 30 minutes, the hippocampus activity reduced, even like turned off in the brain. Then they did a second part of the study, second phase of it, where they put the person, they hooked them up to the brain scan, and then they asked them to complain to themselves, to complain out loud so that they could hear themselves complain. And the same thing happened. 30 minutes didn't make that much of a difference, but after 30 minutes, the hippocampus activity shrank and turned off. So, what does the hippocampus do? It's in charge of emotional regulation. It's in charge of creativity and imaginative thinking. And so complaining, studies have shown, reduces your ability to emotionally regulate, which means you go into fight or flight more, which means your thinking narrows and you lose the ability to be more flexible and to problem solve with creativity. And you lose creative ability in all aspects to create the life that you want. So complaining damages health. And finally, it destroys relationships. I'm guessing that there have been times in your life when you've hung out at length with someone who is negative and complaining. I'm pausing so you can kind of think of that person. I'm thinking of my mom. My mom and dad have both passed away and they did their best. Um, and I'm thankful for a lot of things that they gave to me. But the complaining part has taken years for me to overcome. But think about someone that you've spent a pretty significant amount of time with that has a focus on complaining. And then think about whether they elevate your energy when you're with them or they drain your energy. I'm guessing draining. That's what happens. It drains our energy when we're around negative people. And the dynamic that is prevalent is that people go to work and then they go home and they want to unwind. They have a beverage, they sit with their partner, and what do? People talk about how work went. And usually it's about all the things that were frustrating in the workday. And that's how they decompress at the end of a workday. And then they go to bed, wake up in the morning, go to work, and then they're hanging out in the break room, and often they're complaining to their coworkers about their partner at home. And then they go home and they do it all over again. And that is the cycle of complaining. And the reason that it affects relationships poorly is it's an energy drain for the one speaking, for the one hearing, for the two of them together. And it puts tension on relationships, both at home and friendships and at work. So that's all the gloomy news of what complaining does to us. Let's talk about why people complain. And what are the people complain for one of five reasons. So we're going to talk about that and what you can do to help shift them, to help turn complainers in your life into collaborators. So now we're finished with the bad news of complaining and we're shifting into the awareness that you can have and your ability to help reduce the amount of negativity out in your relationships and into the world. So I'm hoping you're feeling like this is the best part of it. My disclaimer is at the end of this talk, you are going to be more aware of complaining than you've ever been in your whole life. It's kind of like when you buy a new car, new to you car, and we buy Hondas, and say I just bought this white Honda Accord, and suddenly I'm out on the highway and I see white Honda Accords all over the place. I didn't realize so many people had them in my make and model. So this is a similar dynamic. You're going to see a lot more complaining now So I apologize for that, but maybe not, because you're going to know how to help reduce the complaining around you. So, to talk about the 5 reasons people complain, I'm using the acronym GRIPE. In the United States, gripe is a slang term for complaining. Outside of the US, it's not used, but it works well here. So we're going to use gripe to talk about the 5 reasons that people complain. And the first reason, da 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 da. I think I was supposed to say all those things while the slide was moving around. First reason is to get attention. So, getting attention is not bad. Getting attention is a human need, it's a social need that everyone has, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is the number one and the first reason that people complain, though, is to get attention. And uh, you can do your own test next time you're in an elevator of this dynamic where it's awkward until we get attention from each other. So if you get on an elevator and you're all by yourself, you're pretty relaxed, you're just standing there in a little box that's encasing you until someone else gets on, a stranger gets on. And then the two of you are standing in the elevator and suddenly the numbers get very interesting and now you're standing a little stiffer looking at the numbers. Floor 7, floor 6, what's next, floor 5. And then until one person breaks the ice and someone says, wow, it sure is hot outside, or what'd you think of that Dallas Cowboys game? So once one person gives attention to the other, then there's a sense, it may be small, but there's a sense of like, okay, we've given each other attention in this moment. So getting attention is not bad, but complaining to get attention can be, I'm telling you, I believe it is a problem. Oh, let me go back. That's the response first. So getting attention for using complaining to get attention. This is what my family did. I really think that my mom, it seemed like she had 2 reasons for all the complaining that she did. Well, maybe 3. One was to just vent, hoping that that would help her feel better. But the research shows the more you vent, the worse you feel. And the more you vent, the more you see problems. But she didn't know that. She thought it would help her relieve her stress to vent it. Second reason was I think she complained about other people, hoping that I would hear in this indirect way lessons of what right behavior would be. I think that was one of my mom's motivations. But also, it was just the way that we talked. It was simply the way we got attention and communicated in my home. So many people do not even know that this is their go-to mode of making a bid for a connection. But what can you do when people come to you and they're just complaining to get attention? So, this is a phrase that works really well. Someone comes to you, they're complaining about their husband, they're complaining about their coworker, they're complaining about their boss. You simply say, "Well, what's going well with?" Or, "What do you like about your husband? What do you enjoy about your coworkers? What's going well at work?" So it's shifting the focus away from what's wrong and what's missing to what is present and what's working. Now, this often doesn't work the first time you do it. So if someone comes to you, say they're complaining about their partner, and then you say, "Well, what's going well with so and so?" They'll be like, "What? I'm not finished complaining, and you didn't affirm me for what, the mistreatment that I'm getting." And so you might have to say it again. You say, "Oh, well, I understand. I hear that there's some frustrations. What is going well? What is going well with your boss? What is going well with your class?" So one of 2 things happens if you keep using this phrase with the complainers in your life. One, they'll shift with you and go into looking at what's present and what's working and putting words to it. Or they'll find you frustrating and they'll take their complaining to someone else. But either way, you win. So when people complain to get attention, that is the phrase, what's going well with? The second reason that people complain is to remove responsibility. So this happens because of, say, someone on your team or in your family, you need them to do a task and you're asking them to do a task. Hey, I'd like you to, and you let them know the details of what you want done. And they either don't want to do it or they don't think they can do a good job. They may complain in an attempt to remove responsibility. And so this might look like one example. I'm thinking of one of my daughters when she was, I think she was like fifth grade, so around 11 years old. And this particular day, I wanted chores done, and because I had four kids, I assigned different chores to different kids. And so her job, this was her first time because she was the youngest. So the olders tend to get the cleaning the toilet job. But this particular time, I gave Katie the job. I handed her the toilet brush and the cleaner fluid. I have this visual. I gave it to her downstairs, and she had instructions to go up and clean the toilet upstairs. And she she took she took the items and she sat on the stairs and she fell backwards and in a very dramatic way said, can't. I just can't do it. I don't know how." So that was complaining to remove responsibility. And so many people do that because they're hoping that they can get off the hook. And because that's worked in the past. If I complain and tell you why I can't do it or what's wrong with me doing it right now or at this time or with what I know, then maybe you'll take the responsibility and go do it for me and I'm off the hook. And your job, if you're a team lead or a family lead, is to help keep people on the hook for doing tasks that you know they're capable of and to help them to make the contribution that they need to make. And so, what do you say to someone who's complaining to remove responsibility? You say to them, if it were possible, how might you do it? If it were possible, how might you do it? So this is a powerful question in a few ways. One is you're you're thinking out in the future. You give someone a task, say, "Hey, I'd like you to go online and do this and this and this and compile a report and da 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 da." And someone says, "Oh, I wish I could, but I don't have time, da 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 da." And you say, "Well, if it were possible, how might you do it?" No, well, and they might give you more excuses. You would say, "Well, I hear that, but if it were possible, how might you do it?" So what this question does is it opens space for creative thinking and problem solving. If it were possible, well, maybe I could reprioritize. Maybe I could work on that for a designated amount of time and then could shift to this and get 15 minutes of progress done. If it were possible, how might you do it? But also notice the word you in this question. If it were possible, how might you do it? Notice it's keeping the responsibility on them. How might you do it, not me? That's how we offset complaining to remove responsibility. So first G stands for get attention. R stands for remove responsibility. E in gripe stands for inspire envy. Now, the reason it's not the word brag is because brag doesn't work in the acronym. But really, inspire envy is about bragging. And there is no culture in the world where bragging is socially acceptable. You can't talk about how things are going well for very long before people think, wow, you know, that's just not how we communicate. It might feel awkward. But people do complain to express a sense to some degree of superiority over others or to at least look better by comparison, to inspire envy. You can see this in the dynamic on the highway. I see two main categories of people out there on I-35, Mopac, and 183. You've got the fast and the furious drivers, and then you've got the dazed and confused drivers. And what do they call each other? They call each other idiot. So that's a complaint that's implying I'm a better driver than you are. I know how to drive, you don't. So that is complaining to inspire envy or to look better by comparison. Uh, an example in my life of where this showed up was there was many years ago, I was in a women's group that met once a week for about, I think it was about 6 months. And there was a woman in the group that I know she and her husband bought a house worth $3 million. Dollars. How do I know that they spent $3 million dollars on their house? It's because she said so. And the way she would say it is, well, if you spend $3 million dollars on a house, you would think that the back door would not slam. And another time she talked about the some issue with the sprinkler system being broken. Well, if you spend $3 million dollars on a house, you'd think the sprinkler system wouldn't need repair. I also know she spent 45,000 on an interior designer because she said it this way. If you spend $45,000 on an interior designer, you think they'd be able to get the color rug you asked for. So people complain to inspire envy. What do we do when that happens? Well, in team dynamics in particular, when you're leading a team that's got someone complaining to inspire envy or to look better by comparison, the response that you can give is to complement the opposite. So a family is a team. So in a family, if one sibling comes up to complain about the other and talk about what they're doing wrong, it's often the case where you can compliment the one that's complaining because really they're looking for attention for what they're doing right that their brother or sister is not doing. In a team, an example is this group in the organization that would meet, about 8 of them that would meet in the conference room every Monday morning to kick off the week. And they're consistently, week after week, Julie on the team would be late. That's just kind of how she rolled. She would roll in late. Well, this one particular week, the meeting start came. Tom is sitting there on time as usual, and Julie's chair is empty as usual. Everybody else is there, and Tom says, "Well, Julie's late again." Now, is Tom giving us new information? No. We can all see that Julie is late again. Her seat is empty. So if you were team lead, you would look at Tom and say, "You know what I appreciate about you, Tom? It's how you arrive at meetings on time. It really does help our group get started." So compliment the opposite when people complain to look better by comparison. The G in gripe stands for get attention. The R stands for remove responsibility. The I stands for inspire envy. And the P in gripe stands for power. Oh, power. That is a common reason you hear a lot of complaining in your world, especially out in the culture. So when I'm saying this live, sometimes I hear people say politics or social media. They'll even call that out. So yes, there's a ton of complaining and negativity in politics and in social media. In the political system, you pull people over to your side, you gather alliances by complaining about the other. A political candidate doesn't compliment their opponent, doesn't compliment the people that were in term already that they're wanting to replace. It operates by complaining and pointing out what's wrong and what's missing. So in politics, it's really heavy complaining for power. Social media shows up. The Netflix special called Social Dilemma highlighted this. Tech companies hire people to create algorithms that first you get in based on interests and they feed you interests that gets you onto the platform and using it and it becomes a habit. And then they keep you there longer. Views are longer when there's more negativity, more fear-based messages coming, more complaining. And that is how the algorithms are built. So social media is oftentimes oriented toward complaining. And you give your power to them the more attention that you give it. Also, in team dynamics, you'll see this power play, complaining for power. When you have two top dogs in your organization that want to build alliances, and they're one thinks they're better than the other, and they want to get people on their side, and so they complain. They complain so that you will agree with them and side with them, and that just meets some of their ego needs, and then the power play may go in more toxic directions. And so you want to not give your power away just with unconsciousness. So what do you do when someone is complaining for power? Here's what you say when someone is complaining to you about another person for this reason. It sounds like the two of you have a lot to talk about. So one person in the office comes and complains about a coworker. And you could say this, it sounds like the two of you have a lot to talk about. And notice it's two of you, not me, two of you. That might not roll off the tongue easily. It might be easier to say, well, have you talked to her about that? Or you could say, well, what did she say when you talked to her about that? I have found that if I if I do those two things, if you talk to her about it or what'd she say when you talk to him about it, there's this like dead pause. Like, well, I haven't talked to them about it. And then I say, well, it sounds like the two of you have something you need to talk about. So that is the response to people who complain for power. The G in gripe, get attention. R, remove responsibility. I, inspire envy. P, power. And the E in gripe is for excuse poor performance. So this is interesting because it's the flip side of remove responsibility. Remove responsibility, remember, was when someone is given a task and they either don't want to do it or don't think they can do a good job, so they complain so hopefully somebody else will do it. Excuse poor performance is I've done the task, but I dropped the ball. I messed up in some way, or I didn't do what I felt like was a good job, or I know that I let you down in what I did. So, excuse poor performance is I'm going to blame everybody and everything and the circumstances for not following through on my commitment. And you can probably think of examples in your life on people that complain to excuse poor performance. The one I hear most often is a lot of people struggle with keeping commitments to show up to things at the time they committed to show up. And they people blame traffic, which is so interesting. And if it's a repeated event that this person shows up late to, like that team meeting, like remember Julie from the previous example showing up late. If you were her manager and were to talk to her one-on-one afterwards and say, "Hey, Julie, I noticed that you struggle to make it on time to our Monday morning meeting. I'm just checking in to find out is everything okay? And is there something that we can brainstorm around to help you make it on time?" And then Julie were to go into, "Well, I would have made it on time today, but traffic was really bad again, and it is so hard to get my kids out the door in the morning. Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe it. And we it took longer than we thought to get lunches for everybody made, and then I had to stop by the office because I had to stop by the other office on the way here because I didn't have that item that you had asked me to what." And you can picture it, right? Excuse, 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 excuse for not keeping a commitment. And if it's something repeated, the response that is not helpful is to say, well, don't you drive this route every Monday? Maybe leave 10 minutes earlier to account for the traffic that's probably going to happen. No, if you were to, that's talking about something that's already done. And when you're giving ideas for something that's happened in the past, defenses go up. What is a better way to help someone problem solve when they have trouble keeping their commitments and following through? Here's a better response. How do you plan to improve next time? So, trying to talk about what went wrong for something in the past puts people on the defensive and they'll just dig in more on excuses and blame shifting. But if you just accept reality, okay, lateness happened today. What do you think will work to adjust so that you can make it on time next week? Are there some changes you can make or is there anything I can do to help you with this? How do you plan to improve next time? Specifically, if you're a manager of people, you can speak more directly like this. Like, what's your plan so that next time this doesn't happen? And that can really help people shift out of excuse mode and complaining mode into problem solving mode and to helping themselves keep their commitments. So here's our last review for you to put it in your mind. I'm not just filling time today. I really truly want you to go home with recognition, or you're probably already home, but leave this session with recognition of these reasons why people complain so that you yourself can catch it, but also so you can help those in your life shift out of complaining into looking at problem solving. So G is for get attention. R is remove responsibility. I stands for inspire envy. P stands for power. And E stands for excuse poor performance. All right, so Will's 21-day challenge. I thought I had my bracelets. Do I have my little bucket? Yeah. So when I am at groups live, I take a whole bunch of these bracelets. Um, I can't give one to you through the computer, sadly. But what I'm inviting you to do is find something that's your own mindfulness tool and to accept this 21-day complaint-free challenge. Find something. A bracelet will work. You could find any kind of bracelet. Like this one is just a springy bracelet. Um, and my husband wears bracelets too. His are more manly, but he's got them too. Just a beaded bracelet will work of any color of your choice. Um, and have a mindfulness tool to catch yourself expressing by spoken word or text or email. Catch yourself when you do a complaint and track and see if you can go 21 days complaint free. Now, this is hard. The average person, research shows, complains 15 to 30 times a day. So if if you do day one and end up switching your bracelet and the next day you're at day one again and the next day you're at day one again, it's okay. Keep going. Will has found since he started doing this, the average time it takes for somebody to go 21 consecutive days is 4 to 8 months if they're tackling complaining for the first time in their life. So don't give up, and it's worth it. All right. This slide is just so you can have my information. People ask me 3 common questions when I make presentations. And the first one is, how do I get the bracelets? How do I get more of the bracelets if I'm giving them out in person? Yes, you can get more. Send me an email to order one. They have a cost to them. I think they're $7 or $8 plus shipping if you're going to buy one, or you can buy packs of 10. Um, I can give you a deal with a discount code so you can buy one bracelet and just pay shipping only. So it's about $5 if you're just paying shipping. You can find a purple bracelet somewhere else. But if you really want one, and it does say the organization on it. Now, a this is not just a mission bracelet. This is a mindfulness tool. And so if you choose to do it, I want you to really take it seriously and do the steps to eliminate complaining in your life. The second question people ask me is, wow, this is a lot of information. I really like it. I want to take it to my team. I want to talk about it with my family, take it to my classroom. Can you send me a copy? Yes, there's an ebook called the Gripe ebook, and I'd be happy to send that to you. So email me or LinkedIn message me if you would like a copy of the PDF. You can print it for yourself. It's got all of the information on most of the slides that I gave today. And the third thing people ask me is, will you come talk to my group, to my team? Or can I work with you on one-on-one on overcoming negativity in my own life? And yes, I do that. So you can reach out on that. So someday, when you are hired and you are going into a new company or organization, if you find that negativity is an issue there and they bring in outside people to speak, keep me in mind and invite me in. All right, I'm closing with this. Will was a big deal back in the day, especially when this first came out and his book went, he has a book, you can find it on Amazon, multiple books actually, is a bestseller. And he was on the Oprah show. And after the interview with Oprah, and the cameras turned off and the lights went off, Oprah leaned over and put her hand on Will's arm, and she said with a smile, "You know, Will, I don't complain." And Will did not say this, but he thought in his mind, of course you don't complain. You're one of the richest, most famous people in the world. What would you have to complain about? So he didn't say that, but he did roll his eyes a little bit and, make a little face. And she saw that and she said, "You missed the point. It's not that I have all that I have, so I don't complain." Oprah said, "It's that I don't complain, so I have all that I have." Because you see, Oprah gets it. She gets it that she makes her own lunch by the thoughts that she allows to stay in her mind, by the words that she expresses. She creates her reality. She puts energy out that attracts people and opportunities versus putting energy of negativity and problems out that attracts more of the same. And you have that same power in your life. I'm going to go off the Oprah picture. That's distracting too. Let me go back to this. That's less distracting. You have that same power in your life. Actually, let me just go off screen share. Because you make your own lunch in your life by the thoughts that you hold on to, by the words that you express. And what you think and what you say matters. It affects your job search. It affects the opportunities that come to you. It affects how you show up in your interviews. That's why this is so important. You tackle the small complaining habits and patterns that you have in your life about the weather or about service at a restaurant, the small things, tackle those. And then the bigger ones. And then you're going to show up. You're going to radiate. You're going to hold within you. Your cortisol level is going to go down. You're going to hold within you that positivity that you want to take into all of your interactions, even after your job search is complete, into your family, into your workplace. The thoughts you hold on to, the words that you express create your reality. And now you're armed with the tools and the knowledge to really transform your life. And reading a book on gratitude can make a big difference when you focus on what is present and what is working. I hope, I hope that this can make a big difference in your life starting this moment. And that concludes my talk. And I would like to open up, if I have time, you can tell me, Kathy, if I do, for Q&A.
You do have time, and I have a question. So you emphasize the word express for your complaints, but if you've also indicated that the thoughts you think. So if you think a complaint but you don't express it, does it still count?
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, Kathy. I was supposed to have addressed that early on in my talk, and I must have missed that point. We think about 45,000 thoughts a day. There's some research that says up to 60,000 thoughts a day, but 45,000 seems like a lot to me. And I ask you, do you think more of them are positive or negative? Most are negative, actually, or neutral or negative. So it's not a majority of positive thinking. There are people after this challenge that come up and they're like those type A people who are like, I'm going to switch my bracelet with every negative thought. And then it's like, well, but your wrists would be sore. No, it's not every thought. It's actually not a complaint until it's expressed. Don't self-criticize, don't beat yourself up. We have little control over the thoughts that come. We do have control over what we nurture and what we hold on to and what we let stay and linger. So a negative thought comes, we just let it go, and you shift your mind. Look at what's present, look at what's working, look for what you can be grateful for. And that helps to get you out of that mindset so the complaints don't end up being expressed. Thanks for your question, Kathy. That's important.
Hmm. Anybody else, if you have a question, you can unmute and ask your question, or you can raise your little virtual hand, whichever you'd prefer, or you can put it in the chat and we'll find it there if you have a question.
Oh, I do see. Wait, there is some in here. Let me see.
I didn't see any in
Oh,
the,
you didn't? How would you back out of the interaction when it becomes apparent that the complainer, this is from Stephen.
oh,
How would you back out of the interaction when it becomes apparent that the complainer does not want to break their complaint cycle?
oh, there is a good one.
That it depends on the physical surroundings. So if it is my teenager, they're complaining. I'm saying, well, what's going well? Well, what do you enjoy about your friend? Or what do you, what do you learn from your teacher? Or is there something you can appreciate? Whatever it is, right? Teenagers are tough and they just want to complain at you. I would say, well, I think I understand how hard this is for you. And then I go find a chore in another room. I actually would physically leave. I just wander out of the kitchen. They might follow me and complain, and eventually they kind of wander. That's how it works with teenagers. If you are in a workplace, it's a little harder, right? If you're in their space, you can just wander off quietly. Be like, "Oh, I've just remembered." You excuse yourself. If I'm in a social situation and the complaining the group starts to complain like a networking event, I just excuse myself and go look for someone else who wants to talk about possibility and creation and what they're looking for, what they're dreaming of. Um, if someone is complaining in your space, and I've had that happen. Oh my gosh. I've worked in a really toxic complaint-filled company in 2015 and I did have to take it up with my manager in a one-on-one and say, there are coworkers that are gathering and they're just spewing complaints and complaints, and I'm not sure how to handle it. I went to my manager, and then she did a little talk at the next team meeting about just this topic. And a team can bring somebody in like me to talk about it too, that's more neutral. I'm trying to think of what kind of interaction it might be. Yeah, you just keep saying, well, what's going well with? Or what are you going to do about that? Or what do you think you can do about that? And people will get very frustrated. The negative people that do not want to stop complaining, they're going to just decide not to hang out with you. That's what I found in my life. And that's okay.
Is there anything that works these days with I mean there are workshops and all kinds of books being written and nonprofits being created to help us bridge the the toxic divisiveness in the country today politically.
Mhm.
Is that beyond help? Is there anything, if you're in a situation where all of a sudden somebody is trying to find out where you are politically, and so that they can try to convert you or whatever, or
Yes.
say, you're wrong, or that's not true, or you're not, is do you have any advice for that, or is that just beyond help?
I have a few things to say, Kathy. First, I'm going to address probably three separate things, approaches to that. My personal approach, and I'm not trying to persuade anybody to follow mine because um, I do appreciate passionate and verbal people on important topics, and contributions need to be made. But I personally operate as Switzerland out in the world. I have strong convictions and I vote according to my convictions, and I talk to family and close friends about them. But out in the world, I am not called, it isn't my calling to be someone that speaks on political platforms. I am Switzerland. I'm Switzerland in work teams. I'm Switzerland in my nonprofit groups and the boards I'm a member of. I'm Switzerland for the most part. I politely listen, but I don't chime in. Especially if it's a group setting. But if they are on the end and they're not in the middle of Switzerland with me, I change the subject. So that's my personal view on that piece. Another part of it is there is a lot wrong in the world right now. In fact, it looks like it's getting worse. And the reason I don't give in to fear and hopelessness and despair is because I truly believe it gets worse right before breakthrough happens. So tribalism is so entrenched, not just politically, but in all areas, and has been for generations. And I believe we are shifting to loosen up tribalism. And so what you're seeing out there is a lot of panicking people that wanted to keep the old way in place and don't want to shift into a newer operating system in all kinds of ways. So what we're seeing is chaos as that old way is starting to loosen its grip because alternatives are starting to come up. Alternative media, alternative news, alternative ways of hearing from people running for office. You don't have to just be pre-digested information from major news channels. You can go to podcasts and you can actually hear a long form of a candidate and get to know them, right? So things are being disrupted. So it looks like everything's getting worse, but I see it as hope. So I don't allow myself to sink into fear and hopelessness. So when I guard myself on that, then when someone comes to me and they're locked into fear and they're locked into negativity, I can share, I don't feel hopeless about it. I see a lot of new creative alternative economies being built. Uh, so I speak to what's positive, what's working, what's being created. And if they're entrenched in negativity, they disappear. If they want to join me there, man, that's a great conversation. So I think that's enough on that topic.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha. Thank you.
that's a big one.
Anybody
Just
else?
watch. Well, oh, wait, I do have one more thought on that. Um, be intentional about how much you consume. Be intentional about unfollowing on social media. Be intentional. The more you allow the problems and the negativity, the more you're going to attract it out there. So you need to take responsibility for what you put your mind on. And one thing that people say when they hear me say that statement is, "Well, I want to stay informed." I'll tell you, I consume very little media out there, but if something big happens, I know about it. People tell me. I'm not just sitting in my room isolated all the time. I'm out in the world. And if something significant, not just clickbait, but significant happens, I'm not left in the dark. I know about it. And once it comes to me, then I'll go and choose the sources to go get my information and do my research. So unplugging a little bit, try it out if you feel a little cautious about that and see you won't be uninformed.
Thank you. Anybody else with a
And
question? Lots of kudos and thank yous in the chat. Lots of
great,
appreciation. Uh,
great.
and I think you probably have made a deal with Shannon already to share your slides. So the
I
slides will
will.
be in next Tuesday's newsletter, and the recording will be up in a few weeks on our YouTube channel for you to see that. And then after a couple months in our YouTube channel, it goes into our member portal. So anyway, we very much appreciate your approach, your personal story of how you were able to change the attitude that surrounded you. Uh, so at any rate, everything is good. We appreciate it. Well,
Great.
we right now what happens in Launchpad is from now until 12:30, we have a thing called chat room, and sometimes it is a discussion about the speaker and what we've just learned, and we we discuss it. Sometimes it's more focused on people's individual job searches and what's working, what's not working. And so anyway, it's just an open forum for whoever is able to stay for another 30 minutes or so. So anyway, but thank you very much. This was illuminating.
It was nice to be with you all.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
nice to
you,
hear.
Dori.